the sounds of metal hitting metal, glass breaking, and voices screaming, stay in the ether. I was born in the small seaside village of Musquodoboit Harbor in Nova Scotia, the ninth of 10 children. As a child, I would sit on the floor and watch as my father picked up an instrument and just learned a song right on the spot. Several of my brothers and sisters play instruments. They write songs and sing, all genres, rock and roll, blues, traditional, Celtic, standards, and show tunes. My mother had a stunning singing voice. One of my earliest memories is hearing her sing while she worked in the kitchen. Most of us girls sang in the choir, and after Mass, all 12 of us would pile into the station wagon and go for a drive over to my aunt and uncle's for a visit. They had 9 kids, and I was the youngest girl of the 2 clans. That's 19 kids, plus 4 parents. It's not a bad-sized audience. My Uncle Tony told me that if I sang a song, he would give me a nickel, but I had to sing loud and clear. So I would get up on one of his chrome kitchen chairs, put my shoulders back, take a deep breath, and sing for all I was worth.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
At 13, I auditioned for my first musical. It was a school production of Meet Me in St. Louis. I was cast in the role of Tootie. I took to performing like it was the most natural thing in the world. It was just an extension of my family life, which was chaotic, loving, creative, cramped, disciplined, and fabulous. When I wake from the coma, I have no voice. I can't speak. I can't sing. I have no memory how I got there. I was driving in the car with Maya, my daughter. She was 19 at the time. She had just finished her first year of university. She had her heart set on being an English teacher. We had just spent the weekend in Calgary visiting and shopping with my sister Jeannie and some of her family, and now we were on our way back home to Nelson. It was June 9th, 2013, a sunny Sunday afternoon. Around 5:30 p.m., we drove out of the Fairmount Hot Springs Resort onto the main highway. We had stopped to stretch our legs. We would be home in a few hours. My thoughts were around what my husband Larry might be making for supper. And that was the last memory I had before the crash. To tell you what happened, I have to rely on what others told me. Maya, other family members, the first responders, the couple that pulled up behind the crash, my police reports, and my medical records. We were driving along at the speed limit, coming towards the bridge over the Skookumchuck River. There was a cement barrier on either side of it. There were no cars behind that we could see, or directly in front of us. But there was an SUV at the top of the hill, coming towards us. And as we got closer to the bridge, we could see that the SUV was crossing over into our lane. Maya remembers us screaming as we could not go left or right. We met head on. How long did the sounds of metal hitting metal, glass breaking, and voices screaming stay in the ether? Bits of cars strewn across the highway, engine in our laps, the front end bent like an accordion on the windshield, the smell of burnt, flattened rubber, steaming pavement, glass splintering our skin, airbags bursting from the dash, saving our faces from smashing into the steering wheel and the car frame, the seatbelts cutting into our torsos. I couldn't feel my body. I couldn't hear anything. Any moaning or speaking from me was involuntary.
Are you okay, Mom?
I'm dying, Maya. I couldn't see Maya's broken limbs, nor could I see that the airbag had exploded and leaked sodium hydroxide all over her leg, leaving a bowl-shaped mass of burning flesh in its place. Minutes ticked by, and finally the car pulled up behind us. A couple raced over, the man to our car and the woman to the SUV. He called 911, and when the woman returned, she said that she could smell alcohol on the other driver, a female. When the ambulances arrived, the first responders went to Maya. They tried her door.
Get my mother out first.
They radioed for the jaws of life. And after seconds of placing me on a gurney, I went into cardiac arrest. And after reviving me, the primary care paramedic, he struggled to get tubes down my throat, which would ultimately wreak havoc on my vocal cords. Sirens, fire trucks, flashing lights, police cars, locals rushing to watch the chaos. And through it all, a drunken voice.
Don't let the cops find out I was driving!
We were taken to the nearest hospital in Cranbrook. And then later on, we were flown to the Foothills Hospital in Calgary. The woman who hit us, she got to go home in 2 weeks. I died 4 times, once at the scene and 3 times in the hospital. Maya, not yet 20, would never run, skate, ski, or dance again. Not with the damaged ankle she was left with. I was in the coma for 9 days. And when I wake, I can see my husband's face in front of me. Oh, he's saying something to me, but I can't understand. And I remember, I was in the car with Maya. Where's Maya? And then darkness again. There's a photograph of me taken by my son Liam, who was 16 at the time, and he would get shit from a nurse for taking it. I am lying on a small bed in ICU in Calgary. Machines are hooked up to my arms, my chest, my head, down my throat. A rubber contraption covers my entire torso so that infection doesn't enter the considerable opening that the surgical team has made to stop the bleeding and remove the unsalvageable parts of my organs and repair those they can save. The cavity has to be flushed several times a day. A doctor describes my insides like a soccer ball with the organs all gummed together, a mound of tissue and blood. And I sport a neck brace. I am lying on a narrow hospital bed. I know that much. But am I awake? I don't know. Just that I am at peace. I hear a voice. It seems to be coming from behind me, but I can see the scene in front of me. The voice belongs to a faceless woman who stands beside a magnificent cherry tree in full bloom. A twisted wooden arbor arches over a small bench where 3 more people sit. They stare straight ahead, all looking at me. The woman with the soprano voice has dark, curly, shoulder-length hair. All 4 are featureless. But they are there for me. Their song is meant for me. It soothes me. I feel safe. What am I seeing now? A gurney? Who's lying on it? Is it me? This looks like a hospital hallway. Am I dreaming of a hospital? Of a body on a gurney being pushed really fast? I hear an amplified voice. Code blue! Code blue! I see a staff member performing what looks like CPR on this person on the gurney. Rushes through double doors into a bright room. I manage to squeeze in as if hovering on a cloud. People are running around and yelling directions, hooking up machines to this body. There's a surgeon. She's putting on gloves and a mask. And then blackness again. The light hurts my eyes. The noise makes my head throb. I struggle to think, to make sense. Who are all these people? What is all this equipment? Oh, I'm too weak to keep my eyelids open. Oh, time must be passing. I know something has happened, but I don't know what. I try to whisper. There's no sound. These tubes are down my throat. But somehow, Larry manages to understand. And he tells me that Maya's alive. Tells me that she came out of her coma earlier in the day. And that They might try to bring her over to see me later. I wait. I drift. All of a sudden, there's a girlish hand that comes around the side of the bed. We can't see each other, but someone helps us to touch. And I know they are Maya's delicate fingers.
Hi, Mom. I love you.
Maya, our middle child. She was born in a 2-bed hospital in Dawson City, Yukon, when it was 35 below outside. As a young girl, she loved to sing and dance and swirl around the house in her purple frilly can-can dress with her big sister Zoe, always active in sports and performing, always on the go. But let's go back before that. In 1989, when I was performing in a vaudeville show at the Palace Grand Theatre in Dawson City, an actress friend from Toronto and I, we went out for a drink after the show one night to the Diamond Tooth Gertie's casino. And we noticed this guy sitting at the poker table who was laughing with the dealer. He didn't have a look I was always attracted to. At least I didn't think so. Mullet haircut, ponytail. When he looked at us, my friend and I wondered, whose eye is he trying to catch? And then in time, he came over and we chatted. He told us all about his backwoods lifestyle and the log cabin he had built on the 40-Mile River. He had come to the Yukon as a mining technologist and had stayed. We were married a year and a half later. We bought an unfinished house in downtown Dawson. We finished it and we opened a bed and breakfast. We ran the vaudeville and the casino shows for several years, and we had 3 children, Zoe, Maya, and Liam. And in 2000, after 11 years in Dawson City, we moved our young family to the beautiful small town of Nelson. We bought a small hobby farm, and we settled into a somewhat regular family routine. About the crash, Larry wrote, Zoe, Liam, and I arrived in Calgary in the early hours of Monday morning. We had left the first hospital in the middle of the night, with a bleak picture in our minds. It was a hard drive that night to Calgary. When we arrived, Pat's sister and her family were in the waiting room, and the doctors were still working on Pat. Sometime around 8 a.m. that first day, Pat was put in a room right next to Maya's. It was a dire portrait. My wife and young daughter in comas with tubes in them every which way. The surgeon laid out all of Maya's injuries for me. They were severe. But because of her youth, he said she would recover, other than her crushed left ankle. It was not repairable. I was nervous and eager to learn what was happening with Pat, and was present when a meeting took place outside Pat's room during rounds. It was mostly medical jargon, so I didn't understand very well. When the meeting was over and the staff had filtered away, I approached the doctor, introduced myself, and I asked him point blank, how is she? He just looked at me. Sir, he said, I'm sorry. Your wife's kidneys will fail before the day is out. He was telling me that she wouldn't survive. he didn't give him any hope.
'Cause she's flying, sailing above it all, free to be the beauty she is. There's a whisper, there's a voice, always a choice, and she'll weather her way back home. Yeah, she's sailing, towering above it all, following the sound she knows, till she sings with her voice, till she makes the choice to weather her way back home. I'll be your voice, and you make the choice, but weather the storm back home.
I slowly started to make my way back to life. Week after week, I lie in the hospital bed, slowly gaining insight into what had happened to me and becoming more aware of the extent of my various injuries. At one point, I realized I didn't even know what the nurses were doing to my right side. What the hell is that? Oh, I screamed when I saw this thing coming out of my body. The nurse, she tried to explain it to me, but I did not want to listen. She said that I would get used to it, that it would become normal and natural. Natural? Oh, the only way to deal with this new information was to deny it. But the next time the nurse came in to clean my wounds, she brought a specialist with her, an ostomy wounds nurse. What's an ostomy? The specialist described it, why the bag was attached to me, and how it would serve as a receptacle for body waste. She said that I would most likely always have it. Oh, no, I won't. She said that I would get used to taking care of it. Not happening. The psychologist was called in to talk to me. She said that I was now an ostomate and that I would have to accept it. I stared straight ahead. Did I have to accept this fractured left shoulder? This 15-inch scar from sternum to pelvis? Collapsed lungs? Fractured ribs and vertebrae? How exactly does anyone accept that? And what about my young, vibrant, beautiful daughter down the hall, with all 4 limbs broken, steel rods pushed through both hips and legs, her left ankle crushed beyond repair? Do I accept that also? Don't ask me to be tolerant of this new life my daughter and I find ourselves thrown into through no fault of our own. And don't ask me to stop being depressed. It is too much. And that was the end of that session. I was not the pushover that the hospital staff was hoping for when it came to accepting my plight. But the hospital staff had one more trick up their sleeve. A surgeon was called in to talk to me about the ostomy. And in the midst of his explanation, describing my injuries, he said a magic word: reversal. Reversal. Oh, how that word reversal changed me. Relief just flowed over me. Oh, I would not always be an ostomy. Throughout that whole year, I held on to the notion of a reversal resection. It helped me get through all the other struggles that were thrown at me. But of course, life doesn't always have reversals. At least mine doesn't. A year later, after more medical complications, I was told that a reversal would unlikely to work. It wasn't a matter of choosing or refusing to accept it. It was a matter of getting used to it. I was an ostomy, and I would be for life. Broken shoulder, crushed vocal cords, believing I would never sing again. My back and left ankle in braces, propped in a small hospital bed, waiting, worried I would never be able to go home again. And then 6 weeks after the crash, painful fistulas formed. Do you know what fistulas are? I didn't. They are abscessed internal tunnels connecting my ruptured stomach to my abdominal wall. And they had to be lanced. It happened to be on the night that Larry, Zoe, and Liam were home in Nelson attending a fundraiser that my friends had coordinated for us. The staff in the hospital, they were prepared for the pain of the lancing, but I wasn't. My screams were heard throughout the 4th floor of the Foothills Hospital, and that was with heavy painkillers. Progress was so slow, I didn't know I was making any. And then, in mid-August, I painstakingly managed to dangle my legs over the side of the bed. And a few days later, I took my first steps. And then a terrible decision was made, that Maya would remain in Calgary, and I would be transferred to the Kelowna General Hospital. My oldest sister, Judy, she flew out from Nova Scotia to be with me, while Larry remained in Calgary with our daughter. I was placed in a dark, cramped basement ward. My life consisted of a space 6 feet by 6 feet, surrounded by a blue ripped curtain, no windows, 3 roommates, and no acute care personnel, no doctor to check in on me daily, too weak to attend rehab sessions, and unable to keep any food down. My pain was indescribable, it was constant, and it came with a real fear of addiction to painkillers. I just didn't know how to get out of it, and I sunk into a deep depression. Did I feel abandoned by the medical system? Yeah, I did. And then a general surgeon, he sent me for tests and discovered more fistulas. The radiologist recommended that they take me off food and drink immediately. No food, no liquids. I had just started to get my taste buds back. And my weight was about 90 pounds, and of course it would drop even lower. and then a break. I managed to get transferred to the Kootenai Lake Hospital in Nelson. My kids had not seen me for 3 months. Now we would be able to visit, and friends could visit, and give Larry some well-deserved time off, and he could sleep in his own bed. Oh. In Nelson, I felt my spirit heal. But my body wasn't. The fistulas weren't going away. So it was determined by the doctors that I should return to Kelowna for a procedure that had never been done before. Stapling the fistulas from the inside. Exhausted and defeated, I went back to Kelowna in another ambulance. It was at the end of September, just days after my 55th birthday. The procedure was done, and 3 weeks later, the little bastards finally tightly closed. I was allowed to celebrate with a bowl of chicken broth. And then 6 days later, I was given a light meal. And on day 7, the fistulas reopened. I was flown to the St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, where a Grosjean catheter dome was installed into my chest, a line that went directly to my heart through my blood system and fed me liquid food, total parenteral nutrition. 7 long months after the stapling procedure, the tracks to the fistulas finally closed. But no chicken broth this time. It would be another 7 months before the doctors okayed the introduction of food and drink. And that would be November of 2014. 18 months after we were hit by a drunk driver.
Two steps forward, hold on tight. One step back, continue the fight. Living life, minutes at a time. What to call a victory? Steps so small I cannot see. No direction seems to be.
Keep shining.
Forward,
Pat
forward,
and
moving.
Maya.
Sideways, just moving. Nowhere at all.
Sending you
Count
love
your
and healing
blessings,
thoughts.
one by one. 2 loving daughters, a husband, a son. We're all living life, seconds at
Dear
a
Pat and Maya, we are holding you in our hearts.
Time that we cannot get back. Time stuck in this cul-de-sac. Setback after setback. Larry and Liam and Maya and
You
Zoe
got
and
this.
Melody. A community for me. And 1,000 cranes will help me stand my ground. Yes, and 1,000 cranes.
Speedy recovery.
With their wings
We love you.
unbound. All of these people, all of this love, and 1,000 cranes flying above.
It was while we were still in hospital in Calgary that Maya and I received a gift from members of Selkirk College, where I worked. It was the gift of 1,000 cranes. Many of the folded origami had written messages, random notes of love and inspiration. Some of the cranes were printed on sheet music, created by my choir friends. At the time, I wasn't reading yet, so Maya read them to me, one by one. After the crash, and during the entire recovery, My family was placed into the unfamiliar territory of navigating our way through the legal challenges. My husband, Larry, had arranged for legal representation just weeks after the crash. My personal injury lawyer had come to visit me once while I was in the hospital in Calgary. He explained, the woman who hit us had been drinking with 2 friends for 5 hours. She had 3 drinks at one bar, then drove to a bar in another town and had several tequila shots and 5 margaritas. And suddenly she remembered she had to pick up her son, who was 2 years old. She stole her friend's SUV and she managed to drive 17 kilometers before crashing into Maya and me, making us victims of her violent crime. The blood tests that were taken several hours after the crash were 3 times beyond the legal limit. It was 0.15. A decision was made in the Cranbrook Hospital not to fulfill the blood demand request by the RCMP. I later read that the RCMP, in their report, the hospital in Cranbrook was concerned about paying overtime for any staff member that might have to attend any legal proceeding. They did release the blood test, but only after they were served a warrant. My lawyer visited me again in the Kootenay Lake Hospital in Nelson, and then several times after I was released from the 4th hospital. I was living with fistulas, nurses and care aides coming to our house every day, visits to the hospital, blood tests, my GP, specialists, and therapist appointments. My thinking around this time was that I thought everything would fall into place once the criminal and the civil suits were over. I could get back to doing things with my husband and kids, resume my passion as a theater artist and an active community member. But I didn't know I was still grieving my body. I didn't know how to measure my anger. I found myself ignoring signs of it because I just wanted to have my life back. How could I be a wife and a mother to a teenage boy and 2 daughters, one of whom was dealing with this similar struggles each and every day? A counselor was found for me, and I wasn't in there for 5 minutes, and I was a ball of blathering tears and snot. I simply could not stop crying. I thought I was going to pass out, but not from the crying, but from recognizing the grief I was carrying.
Life's a journey. What a journey. You never quite believe it will end.
My oldest brother, Jim, and a writing partner of his, Don Harwood Jones, they wrote a song called Life's a Journey back in the late 90s from a musical called Death the Musical. Ironically, I played the lead in the premiere production at Neptune Theatre in Halifax. Now, this song is one of the more popular songs from the score. When I decided to write this memoir, I actually considered using the title, Life's a Journey. My focus was on the journey of loss, and grief, and recovery. But as time went on, I realized that I had to respond to the entire experience, which meant addressing the legal challenges that my family and I were thrust into. It took 3 years for us to settle the civil suit. Finally, in mediation, we sat down with 8 lawyers and their insurance adjusters, our 2 lawyers, and a mediator. The lawyers for the insurance adjusters told us that they had no intention of giving us a dime for our suffering. We were the victims, but we were made to feel like the perpetrators. I thought it was the job of the defense to prove that their client was innocent, not that Maya and I were guilty. But their strategy was to turn the onus on us and try to prove that we were not even hurt in the crash, and went so far as to suggest that we might have been responsible for the crash, even though the evidence was overwhelming that the driver was drunk and that she had been overserved by 2 bars, was a repeat offender and guilty of the crime. That did not mean that the insurance companies would admit to any wrongdoing by their clients. But in the end, they did compensate us. They had to. So what was achieved by putting us through all this turmoil? In terms of the criminal case, it took close to a year after the crash for the Crown prosecutor to contact us about any hearing or trial. In fact, it was me that contacted the Crown, asking to be brought up to date. My health was severely compromised in every way, and that call was not an easy one to make. They told me that they had a lot of cases in front of them, and they hadn't even looked at ours yet. There were elements of the medical system that I felt abandoned by, but also the legal system. And to counter this was an organization called MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They contacted us, and they supported us right from the start. I needed answers about this delay, so I called my MP and my MLA, and I asked them to put pressure on the Crown to try to get our case moving. Both government officials said they would try, but they had no pull when it came to Crown legal proceedings. But within a week, I received a letter stating that the criminal proceedings would begin in the fall. 2014, 15 months after the crash. The trial took place in November at the Cranbrook Courthouse. Larry and I, and our eldest daughter Zoe, we were met there by a representative from MAD and the couple who had arrived at the scene of the crash. The courtroom was filled with supporters of the woman who hit us. She walked into the courtroom. She took a seat beside her court-appointed defense lawyer. She turned to the crowd and smiled. She didn't look at me. I froze. I couldn't breathe. This was the first moment I had seen the woman. She was in her mid-30s. She was defending herself against 2 counts of drunk driving causing bodily harm and 2 counts of driving with a suspended license. She had lost it the year before, driving drunk, and had caused another crash. My body trembled as I sat in that courtroom listening for more than 5 hours. And when my name was called to read my victim impact statement, and also Maya's, My legs buckled under me. How would I be able to stop my voice from shaking? How would I be able to stop crying as I read Maya's statement describing her injuries and emotional grief? Larry helped me to walk to the front of the room, in front of the judge. I could see the woman sitting to the right of me with her lawyer. Why was I so scared? She couldn't do anything more to me. Not here. I read for close to 30 minutes. I laid my soul bare in that courtroom. 35 years working as a performer did not prepare me. You would think that I would be able to control my breathing, my body, my reactions. No actor training in the world could stifle the emotion in me. And then the woman read her statement. She said she had a disease called alcoholism. She said she had lost her grandmother months earlier, had left her husband, had come out as gay and was bullied by the community. And on the day of the crash, she had turned to alcohol to deal with her issues. The judge reminded her that this was her 4th alcohol-related DUI. The judge said that he would deliver his sentence on Christmas Eve. He then turned to the woman and asked if that date worked for her. He didn't ask us. It was as if he was asking us to accept our pain and suffering as simply byproducts of her crime. On December 24th, we went back to Cranbrook. We sat in the courtroom. The judge asked the Crown prosecutor why he had not asked for the maximum allowed of 10 years. The Crown gave a nonchalant response. He said that case studies, he felt they did not support asking for that. The look of surprise on the judge's face will haunt me for the rest of my life. He then sentenced her to 2 years in prison. She was released after 1 year. There would be no release, no end. Not for me. Not for my young daughter. There's a high cost attached to survival when you are fighting for your life and your dignity in a system of legalities and bureaucracy, hospitals, emotional upheaval and pain. I love life. And I am determined not to allow this event to define who I am. Just trying to breathe.
3 years.
With no time to grieve.
3 years.
Now I can see it's not about me. Why fight if you can't win? 3 years in this tailspin. No rules in this cruel game. Such a shame to know your name, 'cause my body's wrecked with the memory of you, and I lie awake with the memory of you. Who's on my side? Family and friends. Nobody else will help make amends. Was it all for nothing? Where to go from here? This is what I live with now, year to year to year. What do I do now? How long does the sounds of metal hitting metal, glass breaking, and voices screaming stay in the ether?
Thank you so much, Pat, for sharing that piece with us and part of your journey, and bringing in music and finding a theatrical way to share this story with us. So let's start at the beginning. As far as you've written a memoir and that the play is based on. So tell us why the memoir and what inspired you to want to reach out and share this story within the book.
Mm-hmm. I think anyone that goes through, not anyone, but a lot of folks who go through some type of trauma, as my family did, you search for a way to try to find meaning in it, to try to find something that allows you to move forward. And as an artist, as a performing artist, at the beginning I was like, well, I couldn't even sing, so I wasn't even thinking that I could do something on stage about it. Never even gave it a thought. It was the writing that came up first, for sure. And that really came out of my friend, Kelly Rebar, who actually ended up writing the stage adaptation version from the book. But she kept telling me, you need to do something with it. You need to turn this into something positive. You need to do something with art. And I just didn't think I'd ever be able to get on stage at that time. I really didn't. So I had taken creative writing, like just years before the actual incident. Yeah. And I reached out to my creative writing instructor and asked her if she would help me, if she would mentor me. And she said yes. And thank goodness there's editors and there's readers and all these people that are willing to put time into you and help you tell your story. They thought it was important too. And then when it came to the play, well, once I realized I could do a little bit of singing. I have a little bit of voice after the rehab and everything. I was more easily talked into adapting it for something on the stage, which I felt could be married with a book launch, which is exactly what we've done. The book has only been out a month, and we've got it on stage now. Yeah. And so I really feel I had an incredible team around me with Conrad and Kelly, Rachel, and then you coming in at the end to shape it all and put us all together. And with you and Conrad together, it was brilliant. Aww. Brilliant. Thank you.
Well, it was a pleasure, and I think you have a lot of voice, not a little voice. So I think you can embrace that.
Keep trying.
What was it like to relive some of those memories, both in the writing of the play, the writing of the book, and also in the play? Like, what is it like to bring some of those moments back to the front of your memory?
Yeah, good question. Well, it's funny because at the beginning writing the book, I just couldn't stop crying. It just was like, oh my gosh, I have to tell this story again. Oh my gosh, how do I? But as an artist, I also knew, well, I need a little bit of inspiration. So I knew that the song that had given me back my love of music was Steve Perry, Don't Stop Believing. Yeah. And so I went, "Oh, maybe that will inspire me." So I put it on as I began to write the book. But what that did was it made me cry all over again. So I had to cry for quite a long time as I was writing. But I did just keep pushing, and I kept writing through the tears, and I kept writing through the sign. Then I just started feeling, oh, this isn't bad. Oh, and then suddenly I stopped crying, and then suddenly I was writing, which was a whole different experience. Suddenly it wasn't about the grief and trying to find some therapy. It suddenly moved away from that, and it was about creating something. And I was like, well, I think I want to make this good, so I'm going to really work hard at it because I don't want anyone to read it if it's not any good, But it was really difficult at the beginning, really super difficult. And then let's take it, right up to the present. When we first started working on this play in workshops, etc., like reading what Kelly was building on her paper, all of that emotion came back again. Because suddenly I was up and I was saying it. I wasn't writing it anymore. I was up and I was saying it. And I was reliving it. And it wasn't probably fair to my family going home saying, "What do you think of this?" Like, we really don't want to hear it. They don't need to relive it. They don't need to. But I had to turn it, it's not that I had to turn it into art, it's that I had to treat it as art so I could continue to work on it and so that I could stand up here. I did have to separate it at some point. And you can, and I know lots of people have done that, right? I mean, they take trauma, they make it into something that they can share and hopefully make a change, or, it's an important story that, like so many are, that need to make some kind of change in our world.
I agree. And do you think about her still? Do you?
I think I think of her if I hit my arm, because there's a certain part of the arm when I touch it the wrong place, I have a massive shot of pain, or if I'm looking in the mirror to my whole body, I will think of her at that moment, but I get rid of it as soon as I possibly can. Yes, but then I get these weird moments of being out on the street and thinking I see her because I remember what she looks like. I saw her in the courtroom. She came and walked right up to me and talked to me outside. So I remember her, and I have had those moments where somebody has walked in front of me, and I went, "Oh, is that her?" Because she lives in the Kootenays. I could very well see her.
Thank you for being so open about talking about that.
Of course.
Is there anything else that you want to talk about about this experience that maybe you've learned that you weren't expecting to learn, or you weren't expecting something to kind of come out of? I think I'm a little bit surprised at myself that I took on the project, But let's just be clear. Nothing can work to this degree without a team. That's what I feel. And I have an incredible community, and I knew that before the crash, but then I really knew it after the crash, that Nelson is just a phenomenal community, and the support that we received. So again, surprise is not the word. I just was overwhelmed by the love, and So I guess the other thing is that my daughter is, young. She's young. She's 27, and she's got strength. She's got strength I didn't know about. She's my hero, She is just plugging along and doing her best, and she's at the doctor. She's there way more than I am, because her ankle is seriously damaged. So she struggles, but boy, she's just on the ball. I want to thank you so much, Tracy. Oh.
It was just an honor to work with you. I'm so happy.
Oh, well, it was an honor for me too. It's been a fantastic week, and I've learned so much from you, and I admire you greatly. I admire you greatly. So, thank you.
Thank you.